Welcome, dear dreamer, to serene slumber tales. Tonight we journey once more into the gentle heart of Middle-earth, where soft rains fall on green hills and fires burn low in quiet hearths. This is a place of comfort, of stories whispered at twilight, and of ancient lore passed down through the ages. Close your eyes and imagine yourself among the hobbits, the elves and the dwarves, walking through markets rich with the smell of honey cakes, hearing songs carried on the wind and feeling the warmth of home. As the rain taps gently on the windows, allow these tales of Middle-earth to guide you toward rest. Whether you seek the cozy peace of the Shire or the timeless echoes of dwarven halls, these stories will carry you softly into sleep. So settle in, breathe deeply, and let the journey begin. The first sound you notice is the soft warbling of a thrush outside your round window. Its tune carries easily through the crisp morning air, cheerful and bright, and nothing at all like the harsh gull cries on the coasts or the dreary croaking of crows in the marshes. Here in the Shire, mornings are gentle and you lie still for a few moments, savouring the warmth of your quilt and the faint scent of something sweet drifting up from the village. Perhaps Mrs. Goodwood has started her famous honey cakes, or maybe someone has set a tray of apple tarts to cool on the sill. Either way, if you don't rise soon, you know they'll be gone. Your little burrow is cool, the air still touched with the faint smokiness of last night's fire. The morning light filters through your window, golden and soft, painting your wooden floor with streaks of warmth. You stretch, rubbing the last of sleep from your eyes, and pad to the wash basin before settling down for breakfast. As all proper hobbits know, breakfast is never to be rushed. Thick slices of buttered toast, a dollop of blackberry jam, and a fried egg, crisped just right, fill your plate. The tea, steaming and strong, pours neatly into your earthenware mug, the one with the small chip along its rim, which somehow makes it taste better. A knock sounds at the round green door, and before you even rise, you hear a familiar voice call out in amusement, "Are you alive in there?" Sighing, you set down your mug and answer the door, finding Tomlin Brandybuck standing there with his usual boyish grin, hands tucked into the pockets of his waistcoat. He looks restless as always, shifting from foot to foot, spinning a coin absently between his fingers. "Barely," you reply, and if you've come to ask for trouble, the answer is no. Tomlin feigns a wounded look, though the sparkle in his eyes gives him away. With a grin, he admits he was hoping for a companion to the marketplace, where the Took girls have opened a new pastry stall. It's a difficult task, tasting every tart to be sure they're up to standard, he says, but someone must do it. Against your better judgment, you fetch your cloak, and together you step into the sunlit lane. The stones of the road are smooth beneath your feet, and the air carries the mingled scents of fresh bread, pipeweed, and blossoms. The Shire is alive today, cheerful in the way only hobbit gatherings can be. The marketplace is a colourful patchwork of wooden stalls and wagons, each covered with checkered cloths and overflowing with goods. Farmers argue cheerfully over potato prices, children giggle as they sneak away with spuds from an unattended sack, and Daisy Burrows polishes apples with quick dimpled hands, while her crates overflow with pumpkins and onions still damp with earth. Old Ham Grub puffs contentedly on his pipe as he sells bundles of long-bottom leaf, while Bodo Smallbore carves samples of crumbly white cheese for a customer eager to taste. Of course, Tomlin makes directly for the Took girls' pastry stall, where Primrose Took eyes him with suspicion. For paying customers, we've turnovers, honeyed scones and raspberry tarts. she says crisply. For you, Tomlin, I've nothing but a reminder that sweet words don't buy pastries. Smiling at her firmness, you place a few silver pennies on the counter, and she hands you a bundle that smells of sugar and butter. There's a sensible hobbit, she remarks, and her sharp eyes turn knowingly to Tomlin. By midday, you and Tomlin sit on the edge of a wagon, finishing the last crumbs of raspberry tart. Ducks waddle lazily across the green, the breeze carries the scent of clover, and the sun warms your face. Tomlin grows thoughtful, gazing toward the distant hills. Ever think about going? He asks. You follow his gaze, considering the roads that stretch beyond Bywater, beyond Bree, and further still. You remind him, with a small laugh, that he's been listening too closely to old Samwise Gamgee and his tales of elves and kings. Maybe so, Tomlin concedes, but his restless smile lingers. The peace of the market is interrupted when whispers ripple through the crowd. Heads turn, hobbits step aside, and through the gap strides a dusty dwarf with a ruddy beard braided into thick plaits. His boots are caked in mud, his pack looks heavy enough to topple him, and in his hand is a tattered map that he squints at in irritation. Blasted signs, he mutters. South, not southeast, he said. Directions in these lands are as useful as a teapot with no bottom. Tomlin nudges you, eyes bright with curiosity. It isn't every day a dwarf wanders into Hobbiton. After a moment's hesitation, you step forward, offering to help decipher the poor map. The parchment is water-stained, corners torn, and the runes scribbled with careless haste. A bold X marks one corner, which makes Tomlin's eyes gleam with dreams of treasure. The dwarf scowls, but eventually admits defeat. A pint and a hot stew wouldn't hurt while I sort this out, which is how the three of you soon end up in the Green Dragon, where between bites of lamb stew, the dwarf launches into tales of Thorin Oakenshield, of dragons, and of dwarves long gone. Tomlin hangs on every word, but you sit back quietly, comforted by the warmth of the hearth, the hum of voices, and the simple contentment of a day well spent in the Shire. That evening, as you walk home along the quiet lane, you reflect on Tomlin's question. Perhaps one day the road will call, but tonight you are glad for the soft glow of your round windows, the smell of tea leaves in your basket, and the simple joy of home. Law, however, is never far from the hearth. And tonight we turn from the gentle Shire to the vast and echoing halls of the dwarves. Long before hobbits tilled their fields, smoked their pipes, or sang their songs of second breakfast, there stood Khazad-dûm, the mightiest of all dwarven realms. It was no mere cavern, no simple delving into stone for iron or copper, but the greatest city ever carved by mortal hands. Hewn from the very roots of the misty mountains, its columns soared like living forests of stone, its bridges arched perilously over bottomless chasms, and its forges rang with hammer strikes that echoed like thunder from dawn until dusk. Khazad-dûm was not just a kingdom, it was a legend made manifest, a place where the will of Durin's folk had turned rock and shadow into majesty and light. At the heart of its tale lies Durin the Deathless, eldest of the seven fathers of the dwarves, and most beloved. Unlike his kindred, who sprang into the world in other far-flung halls, Durin's destiny burned brighter. His people believed he was blessed beyond other kings, for his spirit did not pass wholly from the world, but returned in his descendants. Thus was forged the line of Durin, each heir not merely a child of stone and blood, but a living echo of the first. His story begins at Mount Gundabad, where he first awoke, yet his true journey began further south, where fate guided his steps. At the Mirrormere, that still and secret lake at the feet of the mountains, he gazed into waters so flawless that they mirrored the night sky itself. And there, above his own reflection, he beheld a crown of stars, 7 jewels burning in a circle of fire. To Durin, this was no accident. It was a sign of kingship and destiny, a vision that bound him forever to that place. Beneath those mountains, in caverns that slumbered unshaped, he founded the first home of his people. What began as shelter grew into halls of glory. Generation after generation, his descendants carved deeper and wider, shaping chambers vast enough for armies, crafting stairways that climbed into the high reaches, and roads that ran like arteries through the mountain's heart. In time, Khazad-dûm was so immense that a traveller could walk for days beneath its vaulted ceilings and never see sunlight. Its walls shone with polished stone, its gates gleamed with steel, and its forges belched the lifeblood of creation. The elves of Eregion who dwelt westward spoke often of its wonder, for even their keen eyes could not deny the beauty wrought by dwarven craft. To them, Khazad-dûm was like a second world beneath the world, a reflection of stars turned into stone and fire. Yet if stone was its foundation, Mithril was its soul. Within the mountain's bones lay this rarest of treasures, a metal like no other, stronger than tempered steel, lighter than silk, untarnished by rust or time. It shimmered with a sheen like pale moonlight caught in solid form. To possess even a single thread of mithril was to hold wealth beyond kingdoms, for its value could not be measured in gold or jewels. The dwarves guarded it jealously, for it was their gift and their doom both. With it they forged mail that could turn blades as if they were reeds, helms that gleamed eternally, and artifacts of such subtle beauty that even elves, masters of enchantment, marvelled. To the dwarves, mithril was more than metal. It was a promise of glory everlasting, and so they mined. Always deeper, always further, they dug into the dark veins of the world, following Mithril's whisper wherever it might lead. In those days, Khazad-dûm was no fortress in isolation. Though proud, the dwarves knew the strength of bonds beyond their own halls. The elves of Eregion, masters of craft and song, sought friendship with Durin's folk, and for a while their alliance bloomed. They traded secrets and knowledge. Dwarves brought their skill in shaping stone and steel, while elves wove enchantments that could turn doors into poetry and weapons into legend. Together they wrought marvels, the greatest of which were the west gates of Moria, the doors of Duran. Carved with runes and inlaid with Ithildin, they shimmered with silver fire when touched by moonlight or starlight. Upon them were written the words, "Speak, friend, and enter," a phrase simple and yet deep with meaning, for they were meant to welcome allies, not repel foes. Those gates stood as a symbol of the bond between dwarf and elf, a reminder that even the most different of peoples could, for a time, walk side by side. For an age, it seemed as though this harmony might last. Khazad-dûm prospered, its coffers full, its halls echoing with song, its mines alive with light and labour. Caravans wound through the mountains, bearing goods and gifts. Merchants and envoys passed freely between Eregion and the great halls, and laughter filled chambers where once only silence reigned. It was an age of peace, and though the world beyond the mountains stirred with shadows, within those halls the fire of Durin's line burned bright. But in Middle-earth, peace is ever fleeting. The very treasures that bring splendour also call forth peril. For mithril was desired not only by friends, but by foes. Dark powers coveted it, whispering from beyond sight, and greed urged the dwarves ever downward, ever deeper into shadow. Though their skill was great, even the greatest craft cannot ward off the hidden perils of the world beneath. And thus the seeds of sorrow were sown, though in that age none could see how far they would grow. Still, let us linger in that time before the fall, when Khazad-dûm stood untarnished and its glory was unbroken. Imagine the lanterns burning bright along endless corridors, the ring of anvils marking the rhythm of life, the laughter of Durin's folk echoing through caverns vast as the heavens. Picture the Mirrormere at dawn, when kings and wanderers alike could stand upon its shore and see not merely their faces, but the stars' eternal crown hovering above them. It was a kingdom unlike any other, a testament to dwarven endurance and pride, a beacon of craft and courage in a world so often threatened by darkness. And though its story, like all stories in Middle-earth, turns at last towards shadow, we cannot help but honour its beginning. For before Balrogs and betrayals, before ruin and abandonment, Khazad-dûm was the city of Durin, a dream carved from mountain stone, shining with mithril fire and echoing with the footsteps of a people whose hearts beat as strong as the hammers they wielded. For just as the dwarves built and the elves enchanted, there came among them a stranger. He was fair of form and noble of speech, cloaked in wisdom that shone like silver in the eyes of those who beheld him. He called himself Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, and he bore knowledge as freely as others might bring wine to a feast. His counsel seemed generous, his lore deep, and many were taken by the promise of what he offered. Yet names are not always what they seem, and masks conceal as much as they reveal. For Anatar's true name is one known to all who dwell in Middle-earth. Sauron, Lieutenant of Morgoth, the great deceiver, the dark hand whose shadow stretches over every age. It was under his guidance that the elves of Eregion, wise though they were, turned their skill toward craft beyond imagining. With Anatar's whispered secrets they forged the rings of power, each wrought with purpose, each a vessel of might. To the elves they were instruments of preservation, a means to heal, to preserve, to guard what was fading. Yet from that same forge of creation came corruption and ruin, for Sauron's will lay coiled within the works of his teaching, hidden as venom beneath a cup of honey. The forging of the rings was no small chapter, it was the hinge upon which much of Middle-earth's fate would turn. The dwarves of Khazad-dûm, though never so easily swayed as the elves, were not untouched by these gifts. To them Sauron gave 7 rings, each intended to bend the will of Durin's folk, to turn their pride into greed, their strength into chains. Yet the dwarves were hardy beyond his reckoning. His dominion never fully claimed them, though the rings stoked their desire for wealth, driving them deeper into stone, ever in search of treasure that could fill halls already heavy with gold. Thus, while the elves found ruin in sorrow and enslavement, the dwarves found it in obsession. For the rings did not master their souls, but they sharpened their hunger until it blazed like fire unquenchable. Khazad-dûm endured through these days of growing shadow. Its gates remained strong, its forges lit, and its mines alive with ceaseless labour. Yet beneath the pride of its walls a silence brooded, for in their deep delving, far below even the lowest vaults, the dwarves unearthed something that no gift of Sauron had placed there, something that lay older and darker than their race, or even the world as they knew it. The Balrog, a demon of the elder days, a creature of shadow and flame, a captain of Morgoth's hosts who had fled into hiding when the War of Wrath shattered his master's dominion. Long had it slumbered in the unlit deeps, buried beneath fathoms of stone, dreaming its fire dreams in silence. For ages uncounted it stirred not, hidden from the eyes of elf and man alike. But the dwarves, driven by their lust for mithril and urged ever downward, came upon its lair. With their picks and hammers, with the ringing of steel on stone, they shattered the stillness of that tomb, and the demon woke. When it rose, it was as though the mountain itself rebelled. Fire burst forth, shadows spread like wings, and the very earth trembled. The dwarves, brave though they were, could not stand against it. Axes were as kindling before its flame, shields as cobwebs before its strength. For a Balrog was no mere beast, no simple terror of flesh and claw, but a spirit of power older than the world of men, forged in the forges of chaos itself. Its coming was ruin, its wrath unendurable. Thus fire and terror swept through Khazad-dûm. The forges fell silent, the hammers ceased, and the laughter of Durin's folk was drowned in screams. King Durin himself perished beneath its shadow, and his son after him, for the creature cared nothing for crowns or lineage. The proudest kingdom of the dwarves, built over centuries of toil, was broken in a matter of days. The people fled, pouring out of their east gates and west gates, leaving behind the bones of their ancestors, the treasures of their craft, and the very heart of their pride. What had been their home became their tomb, and though stone endured, the spirit of Khazad-dûm was quenched. From that hour, the name of the city was changed. No longer did travellers speak of Khazad-dûm, jewel of the mountains, but of Moria, the black pit. Fear clung to it like smoke, and the very memory of its light was darkened. Few dared its gates, and those who did seldom returned. Rumours spread of shadows moving in the deep, of fires that burned without fuel, of a nameless terror that watched with eyes like coals. Songs were sung of Durin's bane, and those songs were laments, heavy with sorrow. Yet the loss was not only to the dwarves, for Middle-earth itself was diminished. The halls that had once stood as a beacon of craft and endurance were silent, and the bond between dwarf and elf was broken beyond repair. Where once doors had opened with a word of friendship, now they lay sealed in silence, their runes mocking the memory of alliance. The elves wept, the dwarves mourned, but grief could not restore what fire had consumed. Still, memory endured. The dwarves never forgot Khazad-dûm. They wandered in exile, their hearts bound to the city that was lost, singing of its greatness in halls far less grand. For though the Balrog had claimed their home, it had not claimed their spirit. To every dwarf, Khazad-dûm was not only a place but a dream, a symbol of what they had been and what they might yet be again. And so, in the long shadows of Middle-earth, the story of Khazad-dûm became both warning and promise. A warning that even the greatest works may fall if pride and greed drive too deep, and a promise that what is lost may one day be reclaimed if courage endures. For the dwarves, though scattered, still carried Durin's fire within them, and in whispered words they spoke of a time yet to come when the Black Pit would be a kingdom once more, and the halls would ring again with hammer and song. Yet Middle-earth is never without hope. Darkness may rise, shadows may stretch across kingdoms, and fire may consume even the proudest halls, but always there are those who stand against despair. The songs of the world are filled not only with ruin, but with courage, and the memory of those who dared is what keeps the night from swallowing the dawn. Stories tell of Aragorn, heir of kings long forgotten. To most, he was no more than a weathered ranger, a man who walked the wild places with little more than a sword and a steadfast heart. Yet in his blood ran the line of Elendil, in his stride the weight of Númenor, and in his eyes the light of a destiny long delayed. He guarded the Shire in secret, bore the shards of a broken blade, and carried with him the sorrow of exile. Few knew his name, fewer still his true heritage. Yet when the hour came, he rose not only as a warrior, but as a king, reclaiming Gondor's throne and fulfilling the promise of his house. His was a tale of patience and endurance, proof that even the most forgotten of legacies may be rekindled when the world has need. And there was Gandalf, the grey pilgrim, who walked the lands in humble guise, yet bore within him a fire older than the mountains. He counselled kings, comforted hobbits, and kindled hope where all seemed lost. But his greatest trial came upon the bridge of Khazad-dûm, deep in the black pit where Durin's bane dwelt. There, shadow and flame rose to challenge him, a demon of the elder days. And Gandalf, though weary and small against such terror, did not yield. With words that echoed through stone and soul, "You shall not pass," he stood his ground. Flame met flame, light clashed with shadow, and though he was cast into the abyss, he did not fall in vain. For in that struggle, he proved that courage is not measured by victory, but by the will to stand even when standing means to fall. His tale reminds us that sacrifice, too, is a form of triumph. Nor should we forget the hobbits, simple folk, small of stature and quiet of heart, who never sought renown nor cared for thrones or crowns. They tilled their fields, smoked their pipes, and feasted on birthdays with little thought of the world beyond their borders. Yet when fate called, they answered. Frodo, who bore the ring of power though it nearly broke him. Samwise, whose loyalty burned brighter than the fires of Mordor. Merry and Pippin, whose courage grew from jest into valour. In them lies a truth more profound than any sword song, that greatness does not come from size or strength, but from the choices of the humble. Their place in legend was never meant, yet without them, the War of the Ring would have ended in shadow everlasting. These are but a few among countless tales, for lore in Middle-earth flows like a river, unbroken through the ages. It begins in the starlit dawn of Durin the Deathless, who first beheld the crown of stars in Mirrormere. It winds through the First Age, when elves and men rose against Morgoth in wars so vast, their echoes still shiver through the mountains. It passes through the fall of Númenor, the realm of men drowned beneath the sea by their own pride, and it flows into the Second Age, where Sauron rose as deceiver and destroyer, teaching the craft of rings that would bind kingdoms in ruin. It carries us to the Third Age, when hobbits awoke to their place in the world, when Gondor stood against the tide, when Rohan's riders thundered upon the Pelennor fields, their horns breaking the shadow with the cry of the Rohirrim. The river of lore is vast, carrying with it songs of valour and laments of loss, triumphs that blaze bright and tragedies that still ache in memory. And yet, not all tales are forged in the fire of battle. Some are small, no more than a story of a hobbit writing by candlelight about his neighbour's goose, or a dwarf carving runes upon a stone in memory of a friend. These quiet moments, too, are threads in the tapestry, for a world is not built on kings and wars alone, but on the laughter of children, the turning of seasons, and the songs sung in the comfort of hearth and hall. What makes Middle-earth enduring is not only its great battles, but the lives lived in their shadow, the ordinary woven alongside the extraordinary. Together, these stories, grand and small, fierce and gentle, form the tapestry of Middle-earth. Each is a thread, fragile on its own, but when woven together, they become something that endures beyond the ruin of time. Legends of elves who sang the light into being, of dwarves who carved their kingdoms from stone, of men who stood against the dark, though all hope seemed lost, and in their midst, the hobbits, unlikely heroes who proved that even the smallest can alter the fate of the world. Thus, Middle-earth is a land of shadows and light, of sorrow and hope, of ruin and renewal. Every age brings its darkness, yet every age also brings those who rise to meet it. From Durin the Deathless to Aragorn the King, from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White, from the quiet lanes of the Shire to the fields of Gondor, the tale is never truly one of despair. For as long as stories are told, as long as memory is kept, hope remains unbroken. And so the river of lore flows on, carrying us from the dawn of the ages to the War of the Ring, and even to lands beyond the maps of men. It whispers of endings and beginnings, of victories hard won and sacrifices that still ache. It reminds us that no tale is too small, and no hero too unlikely, for together they weave not just the story of Middle-earth, but the story of hope itself. And so, dear listener, as the rain patters softly against your window and the fire dwindles to gentle embers, you may let the weight of these tales settle quietly around you like a warm blanket woven from words. You have walked the bustling marketplace of Hobbiton, where laughter drifts as freely as pipe smoke and the smell of fresh bread lingers on the air. You have sat with young Tomlin Brandybuck as he dreamed of far roads, his eyes straying from his mug of cider to the horizon beyond the green hills. You have listened to a dwarf, weary from travel, muttering about maps long misplaced as stew bubbled over the hearth and the world beyond seemed as distant as the stars. Your path has carried you further still to the echoing halls of Khazad-dûm, where the very stone remembers the footsteps of kings. You traced the shimmering runes upon the hidden doors of Durin, runes that glowed like moonlight upon water. You have heard the ringing of hammers deep in the forges, and then felt the silence when shadow and flame rose to claim them. You have stood upon the bridge of Khazad-dûm in your mind's eye, where fire met fire and a wizard's voice rang out with defiance. You have seen the proud flee into exile, leaving behind only echoes, and you have understood why the name Moria is spoken with both sorrow and reverence. And then, beyond stone and shadow, you have listened to tales of heroes and of hope. You have heard of Aragorn, who walked the wilds with little more than a sword and a steadfast heart, bearing the long weight of a broken crown. You have heard of Gandalf, whose wisdom shone in small moments of kindness and whose courage blazed brightest when all seemed lost. You have heard of hobbits, small folk who sought only peace and harvest, yet who carried the fate of the world in their hands. From their laughter in the Shire to their weary steps upon the road to Mordor, they remind us that even the smallest hearts may hold the greatest strength. Lore flows like a river through these ages, carrying with it both triumph and grief. You have followed its course from starlit beginnings to fiery wars, from the peaceful lanes of the Shire to the fields of Gondor where horns once sounded at dawn. You have learned that not all stories are vast. Some are simple, no more than the tale of a neighbour's goose or a letter written by candlelight. Yet each one matters, for together they weave the tapestry of Middle-earth, bright threads and dark interlaced, forming something greater than any single strand. Now it is time to rest. Pull your cloak a little tighter around your shoulders. Let the soft rhythm of the rain be your lullaby, steady and patient as the turning of the world. Close your eyes and let your thoughts drift as lightly as autumn leaves upon the breeze. The road is long, yes, but tonight you need not walk it. Tonight you may simply sleep and dream of Middle-earth, where the fire is never wholly quenched, and hope is never truly gone. And so, dear friend, our night's journey through Middle-earth comes to a gentle close. We have walked the winding roads of the Shire, shared sweet laughter and warm meals, and listened to tales of dwarves, elves, and heroes long remembered. The rain still falls softly outside, and the embers of the hearth glow low, promising rest and comfort until morning. May your dreams be filled with the same peace and wonder that dwell in these stories. When you wake, may you carry with you a little of the magic of Middle-earth, like a lantern's light to brighten your day. Thank you for resting here with serene slumber tales. Sleep well, traveller, and until we meet again, may your path be gentle and your dreams ever serene.